Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Grace Waniko Awudime. I work with the National Bureau of Statistics. I'm a program analyst with the Bureau, and I work closely with the team that produced this Multidimensional Poverty Index, which is a topic that we will be talking about today. It is an index that was computed in 2022. Now, the government has a target of taking 100 million people in Nigeria out of poverty, in line with the National Poverty Reduction Growth Rate. And this is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals to end poverty in all its forms and dimensions. But to do this, the government need a robust data, which the MPI is. The data, the essence of a robust data is to give detailed information that can help them in planning, in strategizing, in making sure that they are able to reduce poverty in all its forms. Now, the MPI, we can use the MPI to track the poorest, which means it is not just a survey, it is a policy tool which policymakers can and should use in Nigeria to make things happen. I believe I've introduced this report. This is the hard copy of it. We have the soft copy on the Bureau's website, which is www.nigerianstat.gov.ng. There's a difference between MPI and other monetary measures that use income, expenditure, that use other forms like consumption. What this monetary measure does is it looks at your minimum or the achievements you have made. Are they up to certain level to give you the basic requirements of life? If they are not, take for instance expenditure, probably you've not spent to certain level to give you minimum basic things of life, it automatically sees you as poor. Or even if it's just your consumption, if you've not consumed certain level of items to give you that maximum satisfaction, maximum basic things, sees you as poor. And even if it is an income, if you don't have certain amount of money, sees you as poor. The difference between this approach and monetary and MPI approach is that MPI put together various variables, bring information across variables, across dimensions, brings them together and gives you a wider range of information. This is what the monetary measure might not be able to do. Now, let me give you a little background of MPI in Nigeria. In 2018, Nigeria published the first national MPI result, but it was in the Human Development Report. After this report was published, there were a lot of consultations, discussions around stakeholders for the need to have additional variables that will reflect poverty post-pandemic. And they also were interested in what happens among children, the privations that cover children specifically. This was what brought about the inclusion of variables like food security, water reliability, underemployment, security shock, school lag, plus even child deprivation in the 2021-2022 MPI survey. And this survey, we computed the national MPI as well as the child MPI. There are some concepts in the MPI that you need to be familiar with, that you need to familiarize yourself with. Concepts like the incidence. An incidence is represented by H. Anywhere you see H, what it means is that it is incident. And what this simply does is that it shows or it tells you, it shows the number in the population that is poor. Or some people say the poor people in the population. Incidence, which is age, can also be called poverty rate. Incidence. We represent incidence in MPI as age, and it shows the number in the population that are poor. We also call incidence poverty rate. Another one you should be familiar with is what we call intensity. Intensity, we represent it with A. And what intensity means, it is the average, or sometimes we can say, let me give you in simple terms. Sometimes we will call it the average percentage. Average percentage. That the poor are deprived in. That is intensity. Sometimes some people call intensity, they say, looking at how poor the poor is among the poor population. Now, my board is full, so I will wipe this up. I believe you must have seen this. I will quickly wipe it off and explain what we call the MPI. The MPI simply means M stands for multi, P multidimensional, P poverty index. So the multidimensional poverty index, you get multidimensional, we arrive at it by multiplying age by A. And we know that by what I have told you earlier, that age means the incidence, A means intensity. So by the time you multiply the incidence by the intensity, you get the multidimensional poverty index. And what this simply means, it is the share of possible deprivations that the poor experience. So that is what it means. And one thing I have not mentioned is that MPI is an index and is always presented in decimal, e.g., you can say 0.257, which means the poor people experience over 1/4 of the possible deprivation, if you have to explain this now. But like the incidence and intensity, we present the results in percentages. while MPI is presented in decimal. I will later show some examples that will help you understand how we compute these units. But before I do that, let me explain something to you quickly. There is what we call indicator. Indicators are used to reflect poverty, to show poverty, and it is to guide policy. There is what we call dimension. Dimension is categorization, conceptual categorization of indicators, where you categorize all these indicators. Examples of indicators are like food insecurity. Example of dimension are like health, education. Because under the dimension, I told you it is the categorization of indicator. A good example, if you talk of health now, in this report, in this national report, you see that the indicators that are under health are food insecurity, indicators like time to healthcare, and even indicator like nutrition. So now, this is a dimension, while all these are indicators. So you can see with me now that dimension, when I was explaining, I said dimension, example is health, education, etc. And it is categorization, conceptual categorization of indicators. You are saying that these indicators like food insecurity, time to healthcare, nutrition have been categorized to be under health. That is what I meant. Now, another concept that I want you to get familiar with is what we call national MPI. Now, national MPIs are computed by countries. National MPI. They are computed by countries, and they are computed in line with countries' priorities. In line with the country's priorities. Now, these national MPIs, they are specific to countries. So Nigeria computed its own national MPI, which is called the Nigeria Multidimensional Poverty Index, and it is specific to Nigeria. Another concept we have is unit of identification and unit of identification. And what this is where the information that you are using, where is it coming from? Information you are using, where is it coming from? Is it coming from the household? Is it from community? So, etc. This is where you specify it. We have what we call unit of analysis. For this MPI, our unit of identification was the household. Now, for unit of analysis, Some analyze at household level, some analyze at individual level. For our Nigerian multidimensional, the analysis was done at individual level. Now, let me quickly show you how we did the computation of this particular report. But we did that with some important information. Information like what we call deprivation cutoff, I'll explain it in a while. Number one. Number two, poverty cutoff. Now, these are cutoffs that you should try and understand. In deprivation cutoff is used to set a cutoff for indicators. It is at this point you check if an individual or a household is depriving an indicator or not. Example of this kind of deprivation is, I am an adult. It's expected that I have attended school. But if I have not even acquired primary school, then under education as a dimension and maybe years of schooling as an indicator, I will be deprived. And because I did not have primary school education, up to I don't have primary school, like 6 years of schooling, I don't have it, I automatically will get a 1. Here, it means I'm deprived. Otherwise, if I had a primary school education, at least primary school is 6 years, I would not be deprived. So, here, I will get a score of 1. That is the cutoff that we are talking about. Now, for the poverty cutoff, it is at this point that we tell who is poor or not poor. And the cutoff for the Nigerian multidimensional is at 26%. What this means is that if we sum up all your deprivations and you get up to 26% or 26 and above, that is up to even 100, you are automatically seen as poor. But if it's from 0 to 25%, you are seen as non-poor. Which means all households that score between 0 to 25, they were censored. There's something we call censoring. They were censored. Though they are deprived, but they are seen as not poor. And now those that are deprived and they have gotten up 26%, because for every deprivation you get a 1, and they have gotten up to 26 and above, that is from 26 to 100, they are poor. When we get to looking at the results, we will see what the result is saying of this analysis. So let me quickly give you an example. This example will help you understand how the computation was done, because a lot of question is around the computation. So the example I'm going to do now, a very simple example, but if you understand this example, then it won't be difficult to understand what was done in the report. So this example, we have income as a dimension. We have years of schooling. Years of schooling. There are 4 dimensions that we looked at in this example. And then we have another one is BMI. BMI, that is body mass index. And the last one is, let's say, assets to improve sanitation. So now let us take a population, that this population, let me say population here. There are just 4 people in this population. There is Taye, there is Grace, there is Dorothy, there is Martins. Now, of this number, this is Tayo. This is Grace in that population. This is Dorothy in that population. This is Martin. Now we want to look at the different achievements. In saving time, let me just quickly write it out so that we can save time here while I explain it. Why for Grace we have 4, 11, 19, and then we have yes for Grace. Then for Dorothy we have 3, 4, 17. No. Oh no. For Grace is no. Grace is no. Then for Dorothy is no. Then lastly, for Martin, we have 9, 1, 22, and let's say we have a yes here. So now, if the deprivation scores are set at this number, if they are set at this number, let's quickly run through. So if this is the deprivation, let me call this the deprivation, and let's call all of this the achievements of everybody. Are you following? Now for Tayo, everything row-wise is for Tayo. For Tayo, in income he has 7. In years of schooling he has 14. In BMI, body mass index, he has 19.5. And in improved sanitation, he has an improved sanitation. So if our deprivation cutoff for income is 5, what do we say? Do we say Tayo is deprived or not? We will say Tayo is not deprived because Tayo has gotten more than 5. He has 7, so he is not deprived. So now, since he is not deprived, in our deprivation table, here he will be what? 0 because he is not deprived. Are you following? Now, for years of schooling, let's look at it. For years of schooling, let me rule this so that we don't mix it up. For years of schooling, I will just manage this space. Okay. Then for years of schooling, for Tayo, he got 14, and the deprivation is at 5. Will we say he's deprived or not? So because 14 is more than 5, we will say what? He is not what? Deprived. So because he's not deprived, he will get a 0. But assuming he was deprived, he will get a 1. Now for BMI, for Tayo, he has 19.5, and the deprivation is 18.5. So it's even more than that. So he is still not deprived. Now for access to improved sanitation, it has a yes, meaning and the deprivation is set as yes. So it means it is not what? Deprived. So for all of this our indicator, Tayo is not deprived. Now let us go to the next person. Grace. Grace have 4 and for income is set as 5. Deprived or not? Deprived. So she will get a 1. It's set at 5. Deprived or not? She got 11. So it will be what? 0 because she is not deprived. Sorry. I'm supposed to write it at this other side. So she is not deprived. In a body mass index, deprived or not, she has 19. So she is not deprived. But in access to sanitation, she does not have a good access to sanitation. And before she can not be deprived, it means that she has. But now that she doesn't have, she will get a 1. Okay. Let's go to Dorothy, who is also the next person in the population. Dorothy has 3. Deprived or not? So she's deprived because it's not up to 5. So she's deprived.